Today we're getting experimental and testing what different crank lengths feel like. I want to give a huge shout out to Canfield for providing the cranks for this test. Canfield makes cranks from 170, 165, 160, all the way down to 155 mil in length. There aren't a lot of companies doing that. Most companies are in the 175 and maybe 170. Occasionally you can find a 165, but I haven't found very many people offering 160s and 155s. In the bike world, sometimes a really small change can make a really big difference, like a half a degree slacker head angle or even a full degree. That's noticeable. Doesn't sound like much on paper, but when you get on the bike, it is noticeable. And today we're going to find out if crank length is noticeable. Now there are a whole bunch of tests regarding power output and crank length compared to your femur size and all sorts of that. We're not talking about that today. I just want to tell you what they feel like. Now we all understand that a shorter crank will result in fewer pedal strikes because it's closer to the bottom bracket, further from the rock. Ironically, a lot of crank manufacturers have the actual end-to-end length of the crank is exactly the same between a 175 and a 170. They just drill the hole up a little bit, so you actually don't get any increased pedal strike clearance. But Canfield is different. They make their cranks the actual correct length, which is really nice. So a 155 crank length is 15 mil shorter than a 170 mil crank length. I use BikeCAD Pro software to design bikes and measure geometry angles and compare bikes. And when I measured my body and put all my dimensions in there, it recommended a crank length of 157.5 to me. So right between the 160 and the 155. That's super short. It makes sense because I'm super short and my legs are super short. And it seems kind of funny that someone 6'4" would have the same length crank as someone 5'0". It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Their feet are spinning around in the same size circle no matter how big their legs are. I'm not a bike fit expert, and there are real bike fit experts out there and you should listen to them. A lot of them come from the road background where you're going to be spending 8+ hours in the saddle, and that really has an ergonomic effect on your bike. And so they're maximizing power output, efficiency, and longevity on your body. I have a different theory for mountain biking. Sometimes we're in the saddle for 8 hours a day. And if that's you, you should definitely listen to those bike fitters who will help your body work the best. But I think most people are riding from 2 to 4 hours on a mountain bike ride. And so we're not too worried about overuse on these repetitive motions or getting the maximum power. For me, when I make comments about fit like reach or seat angle or crank length, to me that is the ability to control the bike and how your fit affects how the bike rides, not so much how the body performs best. So please don't take my fit advice as a bike fitter because I'm not a bike fitter. I'm a guy who rides mountain bikes, and as I experiment with different things, I find what works for me, and I'm here to share those findings with you. So today, we are going to put each of these on my Banshee Paradox and take it out for a ride, and I'm just going to talk about the differences in how they feel. It's not super scientific, but we do have some control variables. It's all going on the same bike. We'll be mounting the same absolute black chainring to all of these. It's a 32-tooth round. I'm going to be riding on the same exact loop, and I'm going to be doing it all on the same bike. So the only difference from lap to lap is the crank length and my level of fatigue, which definitely comes into play. But I'm excited to see what I learn and see which crank length I prefer. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Have you experimented with shorter crank lengths or longer crank lengths? I've got some buddies who are 6'4" and they run 160 cranks and they love them. And so everybody's different. And I hate to just make this one size fits all rule. And I wish everybody had the opportunity to experiment like this and try all 4 on their bike and see what they love most. I'm super grateful for Canfield for making this possible. All right, let's get these installed and get them out on the trail. I'm very familiar with what 175s and 170s feel like. I much prefer 170s over 175s for my size. I'd like to recreate this on a single speed one day because I feel like the way you ride a single speed is different, and I might actually prefer a different crank length for single speed versus geared, but that's another test for another day. It's nice that I've got the same exact crank in all 4 lengths and I don't have to worry about, feeling different crank flex or running a different bottom bracket. Just swap them on and they're ready to go. We're gonna start with the 165, work our way down to 160, 155, and then jump up to 170 and see what that feels like. Let's go hit the trails. All right, here we go. I'm gonna do the same loop It's a good loop because you pretty much pedal the whole time. These are the 165s. Feels like a little smaller circle. Feels like less hip movement. I'll bet most people, if you were to change this on their bike and swap their cranks to 165, I don't think most people would notice it unless they were coming from 175s, then they'd notice it. I also feel like it's slightly easier to turn in circles. Like when you're going through chunk, I don't get stuck at the 6 o'clock position. It's interesting, it almost feels like an oval chainring how it smooths it out. It just feels like you're at a little higher RPM. It's weird, it makes the bike feel a little less big. You can also run a higher seat post with shorter cranks because your legs don't have to dip as far down. Yeah, nothing earth-shattering here. Doesn't feel tons different than 170s. Maybe just a little smoother circles. I used to think longer cranks might help you corner a little better. Not sure. All right, here's the stand-up and crank spot. It's steeper than it looks here. So seated, I like it. It keeps me spinning in circles more. I still feel like I can surge if I want. Now we're gonna pretend I'm on a single speed, shift to a harder gear, stand up and crank and see if I have power. All right, that wasn't too bad. Here's our turnaround spot. Yeah, standing up and sprinting makes me want to pedal in circles more than just stomping on the pedal in front of me. It's almost like the shorter length propels me into the next part of the stroke more than long cranks. Oh, this is where hardtails come alive. Pumpy, flowy, easy stuff. It's okay to like easy trails. We don't always have to be on the double black diamonds to prove how manly we are. Man, it's fun on this stuff. Seems a little easier on my legs. Feels pleasant, feels like less effort. Man, if I raced XC, I would definitely have shorter cranks. My legs are less fatigued. I just spin at a higher RPM and keep the momentum going. All right, let's swap them out for 160s. This is gonna be my bike stand. $160. If you remember, I threw these 160s on the Marin Elroy to try to get it to spin in smoother circles, and it actually did a really good job at that. So I can tell that my seat needs to go up. With the shorter cranks, I'm not getting full leg extension. That's pretty funny. I could definitely feel that. And I want to raise this so I get an apples to apples comparison at full leg extension. Almost feels like the difference between 29ers and 27.5. I feel like I don't accelerate quite as quick, but once I'm up to speed, it holds its speed better. When standing up and cranking, I definitely feel a smoother, more circular pedal stroke. It feels like a little less power, a little less torque at real slow stand up and crank moves. You know those moves where you just put your weight on the front pedal and it goes? I've lost a little bit of that leverage that you get with the longer cranks, but I've gained a faster cadence with less effort. This leads me to theorize I'd probably like longer cranks on a single speed to get that extra leverage. It definitely feels like less stress on my body. Trying to save my energy for the 4 laps I have to do out here. Yeah, I lose a little bit when I stand up and sprint, single speed style. I prefer the 165s for that, and even the 170s. Oh, so far these are the ones I'd pick for bike packing or long days in the saddle. Just real relaxing and not real taxing on the body. Just feels like the bike fits me better. All right, that was pretty good. Just a little spinnier, a little more relaxed. a little less torque. Let's party a little bit. Yeah. Oh man, I love a hardtail on this stuff. No full suspension I'd rather have than this right now on this stuff. Interesting enough, even on the downhills, I do feel it's a little different having my feet a little closer together. Yeah, my body wants to sit and spin more than stand and crank on this, but I feel like I'm doing less damage to my body than on long cranks. Here comes the stand and crank section. That really is uncanny how it propels me to spin circles even when I'm standing and cranking. That's cool. This definitely uses less quads. All right, let's head back. That's fun. Man, these Specialized tires are amazing. Ground control grid in the back, 2.3 eliminator in the front. So good for the desert. I surge less with these. It's a smoother climbing power. Yeah, on cross-country terrain, definitely like the shorter cranks. I like that higher cadence. Oh, what a trail. It's a reminder to go out and have fun on your trails. Riding's all about fun. Hello. Come on through, I'll wait. Oh, thank you. Have a great day. Thank you. I like these 160s. This will make me a smoother pedaler to have shorter cranks. I'm realizing all my bad habits with long cranks, just standing up and cranking and using my body weight to propel me forward instead of my muscles. I'm not a very smooth pedaler. I chop wood more than spin circles. It's so relaxing. It just feels like such a lower impact on my body. It's so weird. Hey, maybe I can get away with an even lower bottom bracket now and get even better cornering. Time to try the stiff squatch out with some really short cranks. Hey, stranger. How you guys doing? Yeah, I have to shift down a little bit lower gear than with longer cranks. When I see a big hill coming and I'm sprinting toward it, I have to shift to one gear easier than on the big cranks. I just don't have the torque. All right, lap 2. Not bad. Swap these out for the 155 baby cranks. All right, 155's shortest crank I've ever run in my life. I hope more bike companies catch on to this and spec shorter cranks on smaller bikes. It just makes sense to me. Despite mountain biking being around for 30 years, we're still not very good at sizing bikes to humans. When the cranks are the same length for someone 5'0" to 6'5", it's a little bit absurd. All right, let's go see if these are too short. I'm curious what these feel like. I gotta put a plug for Tailwind. They are an awesome partner of the channel. Tailwind is an endurance fuel. You put it in your water bottle, drink it. It keeps you from getting hungry, keeps you from getting angry, gives you carbs, electrolytes. It's not like high caffeine. It's not a big energy boost. It's just simple, easy to digest stuff that keeps you going on long days. I'm a big fan of Tailwind. If you find yourself falling behind your buddies or getting fatigued faster than them on the trail, give it a try. It's really cool stuff. Okay, I can definitely feel these are short cranks. Oh, this is interesting. These feel noticeably shorter than the other two. It feels different, but different's not bad. I need to put some time on them. I feel like my pedal stroke is so small around in a circle that I'm not actually able to get the leverage I'm used to getting. And I actually feel like I'm overworking my muscles. Interesting. Let's see if that changes throughout the ride. Oh, weird. It kind of feels like you're on a scooter or a motorcycle where your feet are on the foot pegs and they're the same distance apart. Obviously they're not, but it's got a little bit of that feeling. Interesting, my body's already used to it. It's so funny how fast you adapt. They don't feel crazy tiny right now. Feels weirdest on the downs. It feels like a Japanese sports car versus a diesel truck. You need that high RPM to make the power. I like these better than 175s, that's for sure. Starting to get a little tired. This trail's not boring yet. I'm having a blast on it. Interesting, my calves are burning more than my quads now. Oh man. I just feel a little more one with the bike with the shorter cranks on the downs. It just feels a little more tucked into the body, more part of me. This is a reminder to get out there and experiment and try new things. It's interesting, I actually feel like manuals are easier on the shorter cranks. I can kind of push the bottom bracket ahead of me better. I got more leg length to adjust on that. So this is where I don't love the short cranks, is on steep, punchy climbs. It takes a little more effort. But I need to remember to spin circles and not chop wood. Now we shift the gear harder and stand and sprint. Definitely feels like I'm sprinting in circles more. So cool. And I don't have to lean forward quite so much to get leverage on the cranks. Interesting. So interesting. You feel the short cranks on the downs. That is so weird. It's actually a little bit easier to transfer when you use your pedals, when you dip your pedals for corners. I feel like the effect is a little bit lesser with the shorter cranks, but it's easier to rotate between the two. Man, these don't feel crazy short to me. I think one of the takeaways is how adaptable the human body is. You get used to whatever you got. At the start of this ride, these felt super short. They still feel a little short, but I mean shorter than 170s, but they don't feel awkward. When I was 7 years old, I started racing BMX, and I remember reading in the magazines all the setups of the pros. And back then they were all switching to 180 mil cranks to get more torque out of the gate. So when it was time to upgrade my cranks, I got 180s to be just like them. I didn't know any better, and I wanted what I wanted, and it would have been tough to convince me that 170s or even 165s might have been better for me. Fast forward a few decades, now BMXers are trying to spin faster and crank less. Who would have thought? I'm getting tired, but my joints don't hurt on these shorter cranks. I wonder which crank length I'm faster on. Man, my bike packing rig's definitely gonna have short cranks, so I guarantee you that. It still does well on steep stuff. You just have to start out in an easier gear. I find myself using more of my cluster than with long cranks. Long cranks I can stay in the hard gear and just sprint up at like a single speed. So yeah, I use my shifter more to stay in the power band a little better. Interesting how my muscles don't seem to fatigue as much on the short cranks. I think my body's happier with this range of motion. These feel totally normal now. I swear manuals and jumps are a little bit easier on the shorter cranks for me. I've learned so much more than I expected to learn in this test. This has been really fun. I'm excited to share these results with you, and I hope it encourages you to experiment. I realize not everyone's as lucky as I am where companies will send them 4 cranks of the same length to experiment. But I'm super grateful for Canfield. All right, last switch. We're going to 170s. That'll be noticeable from the 155s. I'm getting tired. This video took forever to edit. There were like 3 hours of footage to go through for this. Hope you're finding it enjoyable. All right, 170s on. All right, now I gotta lower my dropper again. I'm not gonna be able to reach the bottom of these 170s. Best multi-tool ever. Toe Peak Ratchet Rocket. I'll put a link in the description below. Oh, they feel so long. Oh, wow. I feel like I'm reaching to the bottom of the pedal stroke to get there. Definitely bigger circles, and my quads are activated more. Wow, what a difference. You ever seen a really tall person riding a bike and it looks like they're just spinning tiny circles? That's what it feels like to be on the 155s. And then you ever seen a kid on a BMX bike that's way too big for them and they're just like rocking back and forth to ride it? That's what it feels like right now. And I'm on 170s, which are kind of short by the industry standard. These feel a lot more powerful. Oh yeah, when I stand up and sprint, I can accelerate way faster. That is so interesting. I never realized my legs pedaled such big circles on 170s. No wonder I dislike 175s. I can definitely push a harder gear with these. And I think I'm faster. Feels like I'm on a single speed with this thing. Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. Little bursts of power really bring the bike up to speed. Oh, I wish my cranks could change length throughout the ride. I want them short right now that it's flat. And I want them long when I stand up and crank. Wow, what a difference. I never would have noticed unless I went back to back like that. These definitely use my hips a lot more. It engages more range of motion and more muscles. Wow, that's fascinating. I'm definitely faster on these. I push it like a single speed. I just push it faster. I stay in a hard gear and muscle through it. I charge way more on the longer cranks. It's easier to muscle through that and use my body weight through there. Wow, even though it's my last run, I feel like I'm going faster right now. It feels so different. It feels a little more stable in the turns and stuff. That is interesting. It feels like having wider handlebars, but in your feet. I'm definitely making bigger circles and using my hip flexors a ton more. Wow. Did not think I'd feel such a big difference in the acceleration. You can feel that more range when you dip the feet on the corners. I don't know if it's better, but you can definitely feel it more. Oh, the acceleration's way better with the long cranks. I come up to a climb and I'm in too hard of a gear in 2 revolutions and I'm up to the speed I want. But then once I'm up to speed, I don't really feel like spinning because it doesn't spin with the longer cranks. More feels like mashing. So yeah, right now I wish I had short cranks. Just spin through this, and I think I'd be faster on the short cranks through here. But then right here, as it gets steeper, and I put down the power, the long cranks help me accelerate through it. Wow. But now I want my short cranks back. This uses my hip flexors way more than the short cranks. I can't believe what a difference. And I overuse my hip flexors anyway. I think ergonomically I should be on a shorter crank. I'm a little bit addicted to this power when sprinting, especially on a single speed. Oh, you definitely feel the difference when you dip your feet. I don't know that it's better. I think it's kind of like handlebars, too wide and it doesn't help. Not wide enough and it just feels weird. Hard to find that sweet spot without being able to test a whole bunch of stuff. I'd love to see more component people at demo days. Like try a 30, then a 40, then a 50, then a 60 mil stem on your bike, so you could see what it's like. I think people would learn so much. One component out. Oh, that accelerates fast. When I put down the power, it's there. I definitely don't wish for 175 cranks. Feel like manuals are a touch harder on the long cranks. Makes me want to put shorter cranks on my trials bike. Oh man, the power when you just stand up and sprint up this is awesome. See, my legs are more toast, but I get up it faster. Here we go. Yeah. It taxes the leg muscles more, but I have so much more power and speed. But my legs are toast right now. My quads are just burning. On the shorter cranks, that wasn't the case. Oh, it's weird. I can feel it in my knees more. My knees and my hips feel a little creaky. That is fascinating. All right, let's sum it up. That was absolutely fascinating. I am beyond thrilled with the results of this test. I wasn't sure if I'd feel a difference or if it'd really make much of a difference. It made a huge difference. Here are my conclusions. Longer cranks are awesome when you're up and out of the saddle and just putting down power, single speed style, especially on big sprints. They tax my muscles more, it uses my hip flexors way more, and I get more knee and hip pain. The 170s also accelerate real fast. It's easier to push through a harder gear. Kind of like the difference between clips and flats. When you're on clips and you're in too hard of a gear, you can just pedal through and get to where it's in its happy place. On flats, it's a little more effort to get there. Same thing with cranks. Clips are like the long cranks, flats are like the short cranks. However, I learned that my body is not happy on 170 mil cranks and very not happy on 175 mil cranks. I'm still tempted to run them on my single speed, especially because I have like 4 sets of 170 mil cranks and nothing shorter. But I've learned that my body is happier with the shorter crank. The shorter cranks were just real comfortable. I felt like I could go all day long without overtaxing my muscles. There's no doubt my bikepacking bike will have 155 or 160 mil cranks. It's just so good for long days in the saddle. My muscles weren't tired. I was a little slower, but I felt like I could keep going longer. Another huge surprise to me was how it felt going downhill. The 170s had a lot more range of motion when I was dipping my feet on the corners. Those short 155 mil cranks were so much easier to manual on because my foot that was in front was 15 mil closer and I had 15 mil more range of motion to find that balance point. It sounds stupid, but it made a significant difference. So it was actually more playful that way. When I dipped my pedals in the corners, it was easier to switch and dip because of that shorter length. The effect wasn't quite as much, but I think the corners were a little bit snappier for me with the shorter cranks. So yeah, that was a huge revelation how they felt on the downhills. What I really need to do is swap to the shorter cranks now and do more long-term riding. See if I have less knee pain or less hip pain, or if I'm way slower than my buddies now, or if I just don't like it over time. But this has been really fun to try them back to back to back. If I could only pick one, it would either be the 160s or the 155s. And it turns out that BikeCAD's fit calculator was pretty spot on for me. I like the shorter cranks. I feel like my body's going to be happier long-term ergonomically. I feel like I'm not going to overuse my hip flexors. I completely overuse my hip flexors and my quads. They pull my whole posture out of alignment. It's been a problem lately. I've been working with some physical therapists to fix that. And I think running shorter cranks is going to help a lot with that. I'm sure going to miss those long cranks though when I stand up and just sprint up stuff. So maybe I'll keep them on my single speed, but I think everything else is going to get the shorter cranks. I also think the size of your body comes into play with this a lot. If you've got really long legs, proportionally, what I'm on with the 155 mil crank might be a 185 to you. So post your comments below. I want to hear what you found in your experiments with crank length. Do you want to go shorter? Do you want to go longer? Or do you just pick your crank length based on pedal strikes and how low your bottom bracket is? Thanks for watching. This has been super fun to get experimental with. A huge thanks to Canfield for sending all 4 of these cranks in so we could compare them back to back to back. If you need short cranks or long cranks, or if you want to experiment, check out Canfield's stuff. I've got a link in the description below. Thanks for watching. There's a party in the mountains and you're invited.